Hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Kristin Rasmussen. I'm the co-executive director of Hicklebee. Ann Seaton, my counterpart, is also here this evening. We are so excited to have you joining us from around the state and around the country, even for the 2022 Golden Poppy Awards. A few of our stores, California stores, are holding watch parties tonight with their customers. So we thank you for that. And if that's you, hello, thank you for joining us. We are so delighted to share this ceremony and these talented people with you. For those of you not involved in book selling, for those of you who are out there who are fans of indie bookstores, just so you know, the California Independent Booksellers Alliance, the group responsible for this shindig, is a trade organization dedicated to the vitality of independent bookselling throughout the state of California. So that's who we are. Before we begin with the big announcements, the reason you are all here tonight, I wanted to introduce my colleague, Maryelizabeth from Creating Conversations in Redondo Beach, who has been serving as the Golden Poppy Chair for the last 2 years. Maryelizabeth, take it away.
Okay, so my first duty is to quickly give context to the Golden Poppy Awards. For those of you who may not know, the California Independent Booksellers Alliance, aka Hicklebee, presents the Golden Poppy Awards in recognition of the most distinguished books written and illustrated by creators who have made California their home, at least during the time that they were writing it. That people do leave the state. I don't know why, but they do. Committees for each category are made up from booksellers throughout the state. We are tasked with developing a final ballot of approximately 5 top titles, which is then voted upon by California booksellers throughout the memberships. For 2022, our committee members read nearly 300 entries, and we've selected some of the finest to share with you tonight. We cannot thank the committee members enough for their dedication to this task and enthusiasm for these books. Our hosts tonight are 2 best-selling authors who've long been supporters of independent bookstores and the booksellers who champion their books. Maggie Takuda Hall is a 2-time Golden Poppy Award recipient for her book Squad and The Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea. The Siren, the Song, and the Spy releases in September. And Stephen Rowley. Stephen's novel, The Guncle, is currently a finalist for the Thurber Prize for American Humor and was a 2021 Golden Poppy finalist for fiction. Expect the celebrants at the end of May. I'll also note that this is the 3rd year of our awards and the first formal celebratory ceremony since the inception of Hicklebee, because 2020, etc. If you would like to see the recipients of the 2020 and the 2021 Golden Poppy Awards, they can be viewed on Hickleb's website. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the focus over to our delightful hosts, Maggie and Stephen.
Good evening. Maggie, hello.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I'm excited to be here with you and with all of our bookseller friends. I don't know about you, but one of the great joys of this job, and truly an unexpected joy, is the friendships that I've made with booksellers throughout, particularly my home state of California. And I, appreciate support. And of course, writers and booksellers. I mean, of course, these are our people, right? But I just never imagined the depth of the friendships that I would make with so many of you, and I'm grateful for them all.
As a former bookseller myself, I'm always really excited to be invited back to parties that I am no longer always invited to. So thank you for having me. And of course, a shout out to my forever loves at Books Inc., who I was with for about 7 or 8 years.
It's truly fantastic. We're grateful for independent bookstores, and not only that they have done so much these past few years to upend their complete business model, to go on the fly and do curbside pickup, mail orders. I mean, so some stores have completely overhauled their the entire way they do business, and I'm grateful that stores can be open again and that we can be visiting and browsing. I didn't know how much I missed browsing in an independent bookstore until that wasn't an option. So for everyone, I see in the comment section vodka already, and I just want to say I have some here.
Yes.
So
Cheers to all of you who are here today, to all of our booksellers, and of course to all of our nominated authors. Cheers.
Yay. I love this award ceremony. It has an open bar. It looks a lot like my kitchen, but it seems to be an open bar. So listen, we're going to get right down to business here, I think, but I wanted to say, I was thinking about our hosting duties tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me thinking, the old saying, those who can't do, teach, and those who can't win, perhaps host. But you have won this award twice. So what is your secret? Because I have yet to win. And literally, this is me begging, do I need to come to stores and help with inventory? Whatever I need to do.
I was going to say, I think you need to
I
get
have
a
book
job
coming
in a
out this year,
bookstore
so.
and, go to every bookseller conference for like a decade. And
I'm not groveling. That's all I say. I'll bring drinks. So anyhow, I just want to give a special shout out and welcome to a brand new bookstore in my hometown where I'm coming from today of Palm Springs. It's the best bookstore in Palm Springs. That is the name of the store. Welcome to the Alliance, the Kaliba. They have been so wonderful, and I am so grateful to have a new independent bookstore in my town. So I want to give them a special shout out. And then I think before we begin, there's one quick programming note. In the interest of time, our conversations with the authors will be fairly brief. However, Emma from the Kaliba office will be posting links where you can find out more about tonight's winners. We are also including links to our bookseller stores. So please shop indie, shop often, shop as much as you can.
shop aggressively.
Shop aggressively. There you go. I love it. Add to cart. Maggie, anything else we should say before we dive right in?
No, I think shop aggressively is the spirit that we should go into all of this with. All of these books are available for sale from your independent bookseller of choice. And I hope you all come away, after open bar, making frivolous choices with your money, is my point.
There you go. And don't forget the nominees too. As a former nominee, but not winner, don't forget those nominees. They're great reads too. We're starting off tonight with fiction. The Golden Poppy for fiction, for best fiction of the year, Properties of Thirst by Marianne Wiggins, House on Fire, Lauren McBrayer, Mouth to Mouth, Antoine Wilson, Sweet Soft Plenty Rhythm, Laura Worrell, and Shadows of Pecan Hollow, Caroline Frost. And I have little envelopes here, and the Golden Poppy goes to Marianne Wiggins, Properties of Thirst. Marianne and her daughter, Laura Porzak, will be in conversation with Linda McLaughlin-Feigl of Pages, a bookstore in Manhattan Beach, one of my favorite stores. Take it away.
In addition to congratulating you on receiving the Golden Poppy Award, I want to thank you for writing this beautiful novel. Marianne, you had nearly completed Properties of Thirst when you suffered a massive stroke in 2016. Your daughter, Laura Porzak, has been your roommate, caregiver, rehab manager, companion, quarantine mate, and cheerleader who served as your amanuensis to ensure that you crossed the finish line to meet your publication deadlines for this novel. Thank you, Laura, for loving Marianne and for joining us tonight. Properties of Thirst is an American masterpiece, but it is also an intimate California story about a dark time in our past that includes the establishment of internment camps for Japanese Americans and the pilfering of water from the Owens River Valley. It's the story of the Rhodes family, East Coast transplants to the Eastern Sierra town of Lone Pine, California at the base of Mount Whitney, and is set in the 1940s following the attack on Pearl Harbor. Natural beauty, water rights, internment camps, love and loss. Your novel has it all. So the question is, where did Marianne come up with the idea for Properties of Thirst?
Do I answer now? This is the time to answer. Well, I'm not a California, I was not born here. I'm an East Coaster. And I came here and had never known, well, first of all, this is my daughter, Laura, and she basically drove me all around the state. And I had never known that my government, as an American, had incarcerated and put Japanese Americans into camps during World War II. I just didn't, wasn't part of my history. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to punch you in the face in front of all these people.
It's okay.
I'll punch you in the face. I had never known that. So it blew me away. And when I say that this information came to me, it came to me after I was already established as a novelist. So the first reaction was, oh my God, I didn't know this is a person. But then, oh my God, I didn't know this as a novelist. And even though I am not, in case you hadn't noticed, I am not Japanese American. I am an American, so I own that history. And I knew that there was a story there to be told. And so I'm grateful to my daughter for having taken me there. I'm sorry that it's now a tourist attraction, but I'm glad that we have not forgotten our own history. And to anyone hearing this or within reach of any of you, urge them, or I will urge all of you to visit Manzanar and stay for the film afterwards. Go into it, just go and have your own experience. But as soon as I had gone there and had that experience, I knew there was a novel there for me that I had to write.
Well, thank you for writing it, and congratulations, Marianne. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the booksellers. God bless your feet and hands and everything, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, belly buttons, knees. Thank you for supporting writers. Thank you for supporting humanity. Bookstores are among my favorite places to go. And I'm sorry for the business model that is failing and has failed to make them less attractive as viable entities than, say, I don't know, pizza shops, because they are more important to our souls than any other commercial enterprise.
To be
Thank
fair,
you.
there are 2 bookstores in my neighborhood and only 1 pizza shop. Marianne, congratulations again. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Up next, we have the middle grade category. For many of us, middle grade books mark the era in which we learn to love to read on our own, to savor pages illuminated by flashlight past our bedtimes, and to dog-ear pages with our favorite lines. And whether it's a story about immigration in the era of COVID-19, skateboarding, basketball, a family restaurant, or surfing, these books do the hard work of inviting kids to their own literary lives. The nominees for the Golden Poppy Award for middle grade books are Maisie Chen's Last Chance by Lisa Yee, Falling Short by Ernesto Cisneros, Wave by Diana Farid, Learning to Fall by Sally Engelfried, and New From Here by Kelly Yang. And the Golden Poppy for middle grade goes to New From Here by Kelly Yang. She'll be in conversation with Jessica Palacios from the fantastic Once Upon a Time in Montrose bookstore.
Hello, I'm so excited to get to share with you the love of middle grade books. We had so much fun reading such a wonderful selection, and it's an honor to introduce Kelly Yang's New From Here as the winner of the middle grade Golden Poppy. Kelly Yang is the New York Times bestselling author of Front Desk, a winner of the 2019 Asian Pacific American Award for Children's Literature, Parachutes, 3 Keys, Room to Dream, and coming very soon, Finally Seen. She's won lots of awards, not just on the covers, but also in kids' hearts. She has done a wonderful work. So I'm excited to ask you about New From Here. So much heart went into this book from your own personal experience. And I want to ask you, how do you how do you help kids cope with the hard times that we have all gone through your stories?
Thank you so much. I mean, such an honor. I can't even believe that I'm here. I'm so happy to be here and so grateful to independent bookstores. I mean, during the pandemic was just an impossible time for so many of us, so many kids, so many parents, families, and you guys were there. You know, you were the cornerstone of our society and really helping us all get through it. I mean, I think that for me, it's just all about talking about things, you know, not being afraid. Like there were so many things that we all went through. And I feel it's really, really important that we bravely talk about issues because that's how we heal. You know, and I think that during the pandemic, there were definitely so many ups and downs, and it was hard. It was hard trying to figure out how was I going to capture all this and still have a story that kids are going to want to turn that page, you know, and be riveted by the dynamics. And really at its heart, it's a family story. And it's just really about, you know, a family trying to get through hard times. And that's something that we can all relate to, like now and hopefully in 100 years. And hopefully people in the future will be able to look back at this time and realize that this courage and resilience that we all displayed, you know, it's something that really speaks to who we are, and we have to protect it, and we have to, you know, nurture it in kids and tell them that we're not afraid. We're not afraid to talk about anything with them. And we should look at the world with these open eyes, you know, and be really tolerant and loving and choosing that love instead of hate. I think it's probably the most important thing that I want people to come away with, you know, from reading my books and from going through these last couple of difficult years. But I'm so honored. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, someone who went under time. I feel like, you know, the conductor at the award ceremony wouldn't have to play you off at all. Jessica, do we have a quick question you'd like to follow up with, or
Yeah,
shall we leave it at that?
I was hoping if you want to share a little bit about your new coming, Finally Seen, because I know so many kids are very excited to get that copy fresh. So.
Yay! Yes, I have a new book called Finally Seen. It comes out in like 3 weeks. I'm so excited. It delves into book banning, you know, again, another topic that we're going through as a nation. And, you know, kids really want to learn about it. They are so curious about what's going on. That's like the #1 question I get when I go to schools is, what is it like to have your book banned? Well, I'll tell you, you know, and it really comes down to what future we want to choose. Do we want to choose a future where we're all finally seen, or do we want to choose a future where only some people are seen? I think that's what it comes down to. And it's going to take all of us and all of our courage, you know, and as parents, understanding that we cannot be afraid of children's books. That's ridiculous. Like if we are afraid of children's books, what hope do we have of preparing our kids to have that courage to face this future that is highly, highly uncertain? So many things are happening. We have to be able to have any conversation with them. We have to embrace books and ideas and understand that, you know, we are all living together in one planet, one universe, and not be afraid. So I really, really hope kids are empowered to speak out and, you know, hopefully enjoy the book.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Kelly, and congratulations. And that is worthy of a standing ovation. But if I did that, you would see that I'm wearing the same shorts that I wore to the gym earlier today. So thank you very much. Wow, Maggie had such beautiful things to say about about introducing middle grade. For our next category of nonfiction, don't have anything that springs to mind except for a joke that I loved as a kid, which was when I want to read fiction, I go to the library, and when I want to read nonfiction, I go to the truthbrary. Or you could just go to your independent bookstore and get either. The nominees for the Golden Poppy for nonfiction are Woman, The American History of an Idea by Lillian Faderman, California Burning, The Fall of Pacific Gas and Electric and What It Means for America's Power Grid by Katherine Blunt, Rise, A Pop History of Asian America from the 90s to Now, Jeff Yang, Phil Yu, and Philip Wang, Girls Can Kiss Now by Jill Gutowitz, and Can We Talk About Israel? A Guide for the Curious Confused, and Conflicted by Daniel Sokech, illustrated by Christopher Noxon. And the Golden Poppy for nonfiction goes to, I love that drum roll, California Burning by Katherine Blunt. And Katherine will be in conversation with Scott Eric Burgess from the San Diego Library Shop. In conversation now. Remember to turn on your cameras and microphones. Thank you.
Stephen, thanks for the library joke, by the way. I appreciate that as a bookstore that supports libraries. Katherine, congratulations. This is a strange awards ceremony where your prize seems to be me asking you a question. So I apologize in advance. You wrote California Burning, which is about the campfire that wiped out the town of Paradise. It's really a deep forensic investigation, sort of corporate malfeasance. I kind of thought of it as a study of the largest corporate crime scene in American history, really, if you think about it. You did such a great job analyzing PG&E's actions and the events that led up to the fire that I felt at the end it was sort of inevitable and predictable was kind of what I was left at the end. I know human nature is what it is and corporate greed is what it is. My fridge, for example, had a warning light flashing for the last month and I ignored it. And today all my groceries are frozen in my fridge. So my mayonnaise, I have to chisel it out because I just ignored it. And it reminds me of the iron hook in your book that PG&E had. So do you want to talk about that 100-year-old hook and sort of what it represents for all these things we're experiencing that you covered in your book?
Absolutely. I mean, it's incredible to think about the state of the infrastructure that powers almost everything that we do. I mean, we think about the campfire. It started in November 18. It killed 84 people, destroyed the town of Paradise. And it ignited when a hook holding up a wire on a 100-year-old transmission tower broke in half and, dropped that wire. Sparks showered the ground and the fire spread with really devastating speed, in part because the climate is changing. Severe periods of drought have made it so that millions of trees have died all throughout Northern California. And the hook is really a lens through which to view a lot of distinct converging risks that we're going to face, as we grapple with climate change, as we grapple with the fact that this infrastructure that we rely on is getting older and requires more maintenance. And the companies that are tasked with overseeing it have greater responsibility in that way to think ahead instead of thinking backwards in the way they have for many, many years. And PG has been certainly guilty of that. But there's certainly other variables that come into play as well. And the book aims to weave all those things together.
So, and your day job as a journalist with the Wall Street Journal, so you cover kind of the intersection of climate and big business. Is that a fair way to put it? What would you?
Absolutely. I cover the power sector in particular, but that is big business and grappling with climate change.
So is there anything out there, if you had to make a prediction, what the next iron hook is that's going to lead to our next inevitable climate change tragedy in California or anywhere really in the country?
Just briefly, I'll say that when I started this book, I was worried that the broader implications wouldn't resonate. But I think that the disasters that we've seen just over the last couple of years, whether it be Texas or other rolling blackouts, power supply issues, and then just the kind of the freak weather events that have stressed the infrastructure that we have made it so that more people are understanding this. And it's going to become an increasingly big deal in the next few years.
Katherine, what an interesting acceptance speech. Thank you for answering our questions and congratulations.
To end on an optimistic note, thank you for this award. I'm very honored.
Cool.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Katherine. And Katherine, congratulations again.
Thank you.
So even in the boom of the early ebook boom in the early 2010s, one category of books was almost completely untouched, and that was picture books. Because even if we can read our recipes, our romances, and our memoirs off our phones, there just won't ever be a replacement for opening a book with a little one on your lap as they turn the pages and then inevitably ask you to read it again and again and again. I have a toddler, it's real. Stories about seeds that become plants, colorful birds that help us feel at home, painters who inspire, kids with superpowers, and babies who do baby stuff. Picture books are the only books that demand to be shared. The nominees for the Golden Poppy Award for picture books are Ablaze with Color, a story of the painter Alma Thomas by Jean Walker Harvey and illustrated by Love is Wise. I Was a Born Baby by Meg Fleming, illustrated by Brandon James Scott. A Seed Grows by Antoinette Pordis. The Blur by Minh Lê and illustrated by Dan Santat. And Rose's Song by Helena Khoury, illustrated by Pascal Campion. And the Golden Poppy Award for the picture book goes to, do we get a drum roll? The Blur by Minh Lê and Dan Santat. Minh will be in conversation with Anne Seaton, the co-executive director of Kaliba.
Hi, Minh. This is such an amazing book. Your other picture books all have a theme of family and connection, running them through them all. There's Drawn Together and Lift, both also illustrated by Dan Santat, as well as Let Me Finish in the Perfect Seat. What sparked the idea for Blur?
Yeah, no, thanks so much for that question. And first of all, thank you to everyone, to Kaliba. Independent bookstores have meant so much to me and my family in our lives. I was actually just down in La Jolla and Warwick's earlier today, so I was in an independent bookstore earlier today. And Dan sends his regards. He wishes he could be here. He is in the middle of his own Blur, doing dad duties with his son's basketball team, so he couldn't make it. But yeah, the idea for the Blur, like you said, a lot of the books that I've done center around family, and especially with Dan, Drawn Together is about kids and their grandparents. Lift is about siblings. So I thought for the third in our trilogy, I wanted to focus on kids and their parents. So at the time, we're in the middle of the pandemic, and the concept of time itself was so abstract and so hard to grasp. And we were just watching our kids just grow right in front of our eyes. And so my wife and I would turn to each other all the time and feel that kind of like real-time nostalgia of watching your kids grow up so fast. And we never had like a word for that to kind of like talk about it. But when I started the idea for this book, now like my wife and I turn to each other all the time and we're just like, oh no, it's the Blur. You can feel like the kid, like time passing so quickly. And I love books that have multiple meanings. So the idea of like the Blur as like a kid as a little superhero, the Blur as the passage of time, the Blur as like your eyes getting blurry as you're tearing up with happy tears. It just seemed like a natural fit. And for me, I was in the wonderful position of trying to figure out what I would like to see an illustrator like Dan Santat illustrate, right? And what I love about his work is that it's so much fun. There's so much energy. There's so much color. But I think what makes it so special is that there's always this like immense sense of heart and in his work. So the idea of a book that's both fun with kids seeing themselves as superheroes, but also with that underlying message about like the depth of family and all that felt like a perfect fit. And the great thing about it for me is like while I was working on the book and feeling like time flying right in front of our eyes, is that the book made me kind of like take stock and pause and make sure that I was savoring everything as it was happening. So it's kind of served as a reminder for myself to stop and not let time fly by without enjoying as much of it as possible.
That's amazing. And I know authors and illustrators have different ways of working together. How did you work together with Dan to make this happen?
I feel like I found like a secret cheat code to writing books. I'll write a very thin manuscript and send to Dan. It's basically like, I describe it as like in basketball terms, like when I write a manuscript, it's like throwing an alley-oop to somebody. And like, I can throw that ball as high as I want and Dan always finds a way to get it. So I think my job is just giving Dan something that he can chew on and something that will kind of allow him to unlock his talents. So I have the easy part of the job, and I just feel very grateful to get to work with someone like him.
Okay, well, congratulations again.
Thank you again, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you and congratulations. And I'm going to steal that when I turn in my next manuscript to my editor. I'm going to say alley-oop.
There you go.
We've arrived at the mystery portion of the evening. I myself am actually working on a mystery novel. Or am I? That's a little mystery for you. The finalists for the Golden Poppy for Best Mystery are South Central Noir, edited by Gary Phillips. Counterfeit by Kirstin Chen. The Lies I Tell, Julie Clark. The Left-Handed Twin, Thomas Perry. One Shot Harry by Gary Phillips. And Red Warning by Matthew Quirk. And the 2022 Golden Poppy for Mystery goes to Counterfeit by Kirstin Chen. Kirstin will now be in conversation with Maryelizabeth Iturralde from Creating Conversations in Redondo Beach.
Hi, Kirstin, welcome. And so many readers have been able to see themselves in Counterfeit, from handbag enthusiasts to people rebelling against institutions, including capitalism, to, people who just enjoy a good long con. It's been embraced by high-profile fans like Reese Witherspoon and Roxane Gay. Are there any unexpected audiences that you found Ava and Winnie's stories resonating with, people you didn't expect to connect with it?
Thank you so much for this tremendous honor, and thank you to all the independent bookstores and independent booksellers. Thank you for everything that you do in supporting all of us authors. And thank you for that question, Maryelizabeth. Did I connect with the audiences that I didn't expect? I wouldn't say, I think that my editor and my publishing team, who did a tremendous job, were very focused on female readers, women and femme readers, particularly because of the fashion angle in this book, the handbag angle, and then the fact that the two main characters are Asian American women. So it's always lovely to hear from fans who know nothing about fashion and care nothing about fashion. And I've had several people write to me about that and saying like, even though I had no idea what you were talking about, I really resonated with the critique of capitalism, as you said, or the critique of racism in America, or or being a person of color in America. And so those are the readers that are always a little extra special to hear from, because they're a little bit outside of the immediate target audience that I was writing toward.
And not to be super spoilery, but things are not necessarily as they appear in Counterfeit. Are people sometimes surprised? And when they're surprised, do you ever feel like it's literally in the title?
Do you mean, are people surprised that there's a twist
yes.
in the book? That's how twists work, right? If people weren't surprised, I would have it would be so much less fun. Part of my job is to surprise people, but I also wanted it to be a meaningful twist, if that makes sense. I wanted it to be a twist that connected with the larger themes of the book, that connected with the way that the story kind of subverts the model minority myth and critiques capitalism. I wanted the twist to feed into that and to not just be a big shock. So hopefully that's what readers take away.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on being the recipient. And we miss you now that you're in New York.
I reluctantly left. When you asked earlier why people left California, listen, it was not my first choice, and I will be back. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maryelizabeth, and congratulations again, Kirstin. As an Asian who detests capitalism, I can't wait to read your book. Up next, we have my personal favorite category, and maybe the hardest to define, young adult. Here we see the burgeoning of self in all her complexity, intersectionality, and contradiction. Teenagers facing life as themselves rather than an extension of their parents. Falling in love for the first time, or combating the unthinkable grief of losing a sibling to suicide. Whether set in on the Canadian prairie or in Oregon, featuring online friends who are obsessed with anime or ancestors in Pakistan, these books take on the seemingly insurmountable task of both posing and answering existential questions raised in our adolescence. Also kissing. The nominees for the Golden Poppy Award for Young Adults are No Stopping Us Now by Lucy Jane Bledsoe, All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir, The Summer of Bitter and Sweet by, I skipped one. Beating Heart Baby by Minh. The Summer of Bitter and Sweet by Jen Ferguson. The Silence That Binds Us by Joanna Ho. And Sway With Me by Syed M. Masood. And the Golden Poppy Award for Young Adults book goes to Sabaa Tahir. She'll be in conversation with Kristin Hall from Kepler's Books in Menlo Park.
Hello, Sabaa. Thank you so much for giving
Hi.
us your time tonight.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
You are most welcome. I have to say, this is my third year as chair of this committee, and we had such a strong group of novels this time as finalists, and I did not know how it was going to go, but I personally screamed when I found out it was All My Rage, because I love the novel so much. So it is my honor to introduce Sabaa Tahir. Sabaa Tahir is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of An Ember in the Ashes series, which has been translated into over 35 languages. She grew up in California's Mojave Desert at her family's 18-room motel, and she began writing An Ember in the Ashes while working nights as a newspaper editor. I love that detail. Her most recent parenthetical, stunning, brilliant, poetic, and realistic end parenthetical novel, All My Rage, just won Boston Globe Horn Book Award, the Michael L. Prince Award, and the National Book Award for Young People's Literature. And now it's won a Golden Poppy Award. So congratulations. I want to get started by saying you're best known for your wildly successful fantasy series, which is An Ember in the Ashes. And I was wondering, how different was the process, both within yourself as a writer and within the publishing industry, for you to pursue such a personal work of contemporary realism?
Okay, so first of all, thank you guys so much for this award. As a kid who was like California raised, but someone who's worked like both fantasy and contemporary, is like so inspired by the California desert, especially. This is extra super duper special. So thank you. And the fact that it comes from independent booksellers makes it even more special, because I would not have my career or any readers without you guys. So thank you so much. As to your question, it was a very, very different process. First of all, it was a switch in genre, and, I had to keep reminding myself, okay, you can't fix this with magic. You can't fix this tension with a battle scene, and so it was difficult in that way, but it also was very personal. And I really had to think about how best to draw upon the personal without it becoming a memoir, and ensuring that it remained a work of fiction. So drawing those lines was something that I hadn't done before. And so that certainly complicated the process, but ultimately I think my books are about hope. And that was a nice touchstone for me. So whenever I was panicking and, freaking out, which is often when I write, that I didn't know what I was doing, I would just say, okay, this is just a story like any other story, and you have to tell it honestly, and the heart of it is hope. And so that is ultimately what I kept coming back to.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that window into your process. I think we have time for another question. So I just wanted to say forgiveness. I noticed forgiveness plays a major and a very complicated role in All My Rage. And I was wondering if you have a personal philosophy on forgiveness that you'd like to share with us.
Sure. I think forgiveness is as much for the person forgiving as it is for the person who's seeking forgiveness. So personally, I think that forgiveness really is a case-by-case thing. It depends on 1,000 different factors. And if I have any sort of personal philosophy on it, it's that if we want to be empathetic people, which I think is really important for a healthy society, we have to accept that the giving and receiving of forgiveness is deeply personal and different for every person. And it's wrong to actually impose our philosophy about it on others. So my philosophy is don't have a philosophy on it, I guess.
I love that. That's wonderful. That's the best possible answer. Thank you so much again for sharing your time with us tonight. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and congratulations on yet one more win for this incredible, incredible book.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Now moving on to poetry. I don't have a joke for poetry. Oh, yes, I do. Since we're a Western state, what is the highest honor among cowboy poets? Poet laureate. If only this show could afford writers. Poetry lifts our souls. I could write 1,000 novels before I could write one successful poem. So I'm in awe of these nominees tonight. The nominees for the 2022 Golden Poppy Award in Poetry: All the Flowers Kneeling by Paul Tran, Herd Horde, Atsuro Riley, Refractive Africa, Will Alexander, Daughters of Harriet, Cynthia Parker Ohini, and Uncollected Poems, Drafts, Fragments, and Translations, Gary Snyder. And the Golden Poppy Award goes to All the Flowers Kneeling by Paul Tran. I think Paul is not with us tonight. Kristin, do you have a programming note?
I sure do. I was very proud to serve on the poetry committee with some very wonderful people. I know John Evans from Diesel Bookstore is here tonight, and this was an amazing group of poets, and we were so proud to read their work. Unfortunately, the enormously talented Paul Tran was unable to join us tonight because of a scheduling conflict. However, Paul shared with us a brief video and reading, and we are very proud to share it with you right now.
Hi everyone, I am so grateful to the California Independent Bookseller Association for supporting me and supporting my work with the Golden Poppy Book Award in Poetry. When I was growing up, my mom and I would take the bus downtown every Saturday so she could study how dresses were made at the mall, and to do that, she would drop me off at the bookstore on the 3rd floor, and so I know how incredible it is to have a bookseller put an author, a character, an adventure into a young reader's hands that would change their life forever. And so I want to read you, in great gratitude, a poem from my book, All the Flowers Kneeling. Thank you for everything you do, and thank you for believing in me. It's a section from the long poem, I see not stars, but their light reaching across the distance between us. Bloomed after decades dormant, after dryness and heat, after rainfall blurred the atmosphere, the desert, a sea of gold and pink and purple, let sprout. Let butterflies and bees and hummingbirds let grow this desert gold, this gravel ghost, this golden evening primrose, this photograph of notch-leafed Visalia rising 3 feet high from its bed of stone. Show the way. Show salt flats and sand dunes and rock. Show faith that a moment can be a monument, that the monumental can be this momentary. Human was I, who came back and still took for granted the abundance nature had made known to me. Princess plume, magnificent lupine, my suffering is that I try to make my suffering beautiful. And I'm no beauty. I'm told that nature is an allegory in which the ego hides, like the dark throat-shooting star. Cruelest was I, who crossed Death Valley into the valley of life. By my own invention, I found a way. I'm no artifact. Between art and fact, Thank you so much.
I wish I did literally anything in my life with that much style. The next 2 awards are both juried prizes selected by the committee members that celebrate diversity in our state's rich cultural heritage. For a long time, most of Kids Lit was about white boys with talking dogs. And while I like a talking dog as much as the next person, it's been so heartening as an adult to watch children's literature explode in terms of diversity. These books, which we understand to be essential in the effort to raise a generation of readers that is kinder, smarter, and more empathetic than the last, are more often than not those that are facing a new wave of book bans sweeping across the nation. We find ourselves faced with an old foe with a new face. And books like these that reflect our experiences that are so often hidden or open a window where once there was none have become collateral damage. Only a monster need fear the mirror. Only the brokenhearted fears a window. And so it is with deepest pride that I get to announce the nominees for this year's Mirrors and Windows Excellence in Children's Literature Award. Amma Far Away by Margaret True Grenius by Tracy Subisak. Messy Roots, a graphic memoir of a Wuhanese American by Laura Gao. Wave by Diana Farid, illustrated by Chris Goto. How We Eat by Shuli de Fuentelao, and Yes We Will, Asian Americans Who Shaped This Country by Kelly Yang and illustrated by various artists. And the Mirrors and Windows Award for Excellence in Children's Literature goes to, these envelopes are empty, Messy Roots, a graphic memoir of a Wuhanese American by Laura Gao. Laura will be in conversation with Kirstin Rasmussen.
Hi, Laura. Maggie, you're going to make me cry.
That was a beautiful, beautiful intro. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, she's the best. And so are you. We are so happy to have you here tonight. I have to mention that our dear friend, Suzi Hoff from Hicklebee's in San Jose, hi Hicklebee's, was going to be in conversation, but she had a family emergency that she needed to attend to tonight. So I wrestled it out of her hands because I was very excited to talk to you. I want to just tell you all a little bit about Laura, if I could. Laura is a comic artist and bread lover. We have to talk about that later. Currently living in San Francisco, her art career began by doodling on Pokemon cards and has since blossomed to be featured on NPR, HuffPost, and most notably and importantly, her parents' refrigerator. She is a proud queer Asian American immigrant and strives to inspire others to live unapologetically loud. Love that. So be sure, and if you're in the chat, everybody be sure and drop some bakery recommendations in the chat for Laura so that she can go explore some new bakeries and find some new bread.
Yes,
Suzi had sent me this question for you, Laura, so I'm going to pass this along to you. Messy Roots is set in a specific time and place. This is your debut graphic novel. And I want you to talk a little bit about the background of it, but one of the things that Suzi wanted to know is that the themes are timeless, and she wanted to see how current events shape your graphic memoir and how you crafted the story. If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. Messy Roots started out not as a book idea, but originally as just a 10-panel webcomic that I had created at the very beginning of COVID in early 2020, coinciding with the very first wave of anti-Asian racism that was happening. I was in San Francisco and I saw a lot of that with my own eyes and experienced some of it too. And it was purely a work of the heart where I just needed to express all these really conflicting emotions in myself as someone who was born and spent my early years in Wuhan, still had most of my family there, and saw just so much going on in the US and the world around it. And so that's, need for telling just any kind of emotion or story turned into that webcomic, which then after that webcomic went viral on Twitter, it ended up becoming this whole graphic memoir because so many mothers and young children out there were asking like, oh, we want more. Like, what more do you have to tell us about this? And so the timelessness of it comes from, even though it's set in obviously, COVID and like anti-Asian racism, I think a lot of the important themes around feeling othered, belonging, not only for race or sexuality or like any other way that someone might feel marginalized, like racism isn't just because of a single event, right? It is something that for a lot of folks of color, it is lived through your whole life. And so that's why I needed to encompass my whole life in this book, because this specific event will then trigger all these other memories, you know, that you have lived through growing up, and it all intertwines into your coming of age, into yourself.
That's wonderful, Laura, and I think that's just so great that that you've won this award this year, because it really defines the entire Mirrors and Windows concept, and we're just so proud and happy to have you with us. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you so much as well.
Congratulations again, Laura, and thank you, Kristin. Up next, we have the Golden Poppy Award for the Martin Cruz Smith Award for Emerging Diverse Voices. This award seeks to recognize a debut or newer author with a diverse perspective. These books have already been longlisted for the National Book Award, the Booker Prize, called Best Books of the Year by the New York Times, NPR, the New Yorker, and Washington Post, Vanity Fair, and Esquire, called sensual, astonishing, utterly original, and fiction written at its highest level. These authors represent the new guard of literary talent and those who define what the literary world is now and also what it's becoming. Our nominees for the Golden Poppy for the Martin Cruz Smith Award for Emerging Diverse Voices are If I Survive You by Jonathan Escoffery, The Man Who Could Move Clouds by Ingrid Rojas Contreras, House Number 12, Block Number 3 by Sana Balamgamwala, Night Crawling by Layla Motley, Indecent Hours by James Fujinami Moore, When We Were Sisters by Fatima Asghar. And the Golden Poppy Award for the Martin Cruz Smith Award for the first Emerging Diverse Voices goes to House Number 12, Block Number 3 by Sana Balamgamwala. Sana will be in conversation with Luisa Smith from Book Passage in Corte Madera. Thanks, Luisa.
Oh, thank you, Maggie. That was wonderful. And congratulations, Sana. I'm so excited that we get to introduce everybody to your amazing book. I got mine right here. House Number 12, Block Number 3 is the story of a young woman's struggle with mental illness and the taboos of society as told by the house, who has sheltered her family and witnessed her life. Set in Karachi, Pakistan, this debut novel was unknown to all of the committee members before the publisher submitted it for this award. Not only is this book deserving of attention as a new diverse voice from our state, but also because the author's deft use of language and imagination elevated this story above the others we read. Sana Balamgamwala grew up in Karachi, Pakistan. She studied English literature at the University of Southern California and has a master's in education from Loyola Marymount University. Her debut novel, House Number 12, Block Number 3, won the Forward Indies Gold Medal for multicultural fiction. And she lives in Los Angeles, California with her family and is currently working towards her master's in creative writing at the University of Cambridge. Congratulations again, Sana. We're really excited about this.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored, and I appreciate the committee and all the booksellers. Thank you so much.
Well, it's such an unusual choice to set a book from the perspective of a house. Can you speak a little bit about why you chose to do it that way?
Yeah, definitely. So I always felt that as humans, we have such a reciprocal relationship with the earth. And this in turn manifests in the relationships that we have with the places that shelter us and the places we call home. And I always felt my home was such a big character in my own life. And so many of our childhood memories are often connected with our homes too, and the things that inhabit those homes. So for example, the fringe of the curtain you may have played behind as a child, or the chipped orange teacup that your father might have had his tea from. So in that way, homes witness so many histories, personal histories, political histories. And besides that, I felt that the house has the power to be the most perfect, omniscient narrator. It sees so much, it feels so much, but yet it cannot control anything and it can't intervene. And I feel like as humans, we often feel that powerlessness, and I wanted to tap into that as a narrator for my story. And while the house protects and shelters, it also has the weight of secrets that it holds, and that can be so suffocating. So for that reason, I thought it would be a good device to narrate the story of Nadia through the home that shelters her.
Wow, well, we absolutely loved it. Congratulations again. We can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Next up, we have romance. Friends to lovers, enemies to lovers, book lovers to lovers. Those who say they don't read romance just haven't been introduced to the right romance, which is exactly how I walked into Pages in Manhattan Beach last spring and bought all 4 volumes of Heartstopper. The finalists for this year's Golden Poppy Award for Romance are A Scot Is Not Enough by Gina Conkle, Book Boyfriend by Chris Ripper, The Brightest Star in Paris by Diana Biller, Circling Back to You by Julie Tu, Thank You for Listening by Julia Whalen. And the Golden Poppy Award for Romance goes to Julia Whalen for Thank You for Listening. Julia, congratulations. We'll be in conversation with Summer Laurie from Books Inc. in San Francisco.
Thank you, Stephen, and congratulations, Julia.
Thank you so much.
I love this book so much. The moment I finished listening to the audiobook, I opened the printed book and continued to read that too. So thank you. Quick introduction. Julia is a screenwriter, lifelong actor, and award-winning audiobook director and audiobook narrator of, wait for it, over 500 titles. If you've ever listened to an audiobook, she's likely been the narrator. Her performance of her own debut novel, the internationally best-selling My Oxford Year, garnered Society of Voice Arts Award, and she's now a Golden Poppy winner. Yay!
Yay!
So Julia, since you are a multi-hyphenate writer, narrator, actor, I'll start with a multi-part question. You incorporated so many different romance tropes in Thank You for Listening. Do you have a favorite trope? And did you have to leave any out of the book?
That is a very good question. I'm a very picky romance reader. I love all tropes, but I think my personal favorite is probably kissing lessons. And that did not really appear in Thank You for Listening. So
well, hopefully you'll be writing more, so you'll have a chance to get all those in there. I have to ask, because of your background with audiobook narration, have you always wanted to write a book about an audiobook narrator, or sort of how did that come about?
yeah, it occurred to me about 10 years ago when I was actually recording a lot of romance and kind of getting started in the industry, that I was just finding myself in very humorous situations with my co-narrators where anyone has read the book, we would be, sending texts back and forth asking rather inappropriate but totally professional questions. And I thought this is probably really good fodder for a rom-com. But at the time, I didn't know what form it would take. And I also didn't know if audiobooks were kind of big enough to anchor like the entire subject matter of a book. And, 10 years later, everything just kind of came together at the right moment. And I wanted to tell a story set in this world that I adore so much.
We did too. I think everyone, and you address this actually at the end of the book, everyone who finishes the book, I think, wants to all of a sudden become an audiobook narrator, which I know is not as perhaps glamorous as we may think it was.
Right.
Can you address the difference between being an audiobook narrator and a writer of your own book?
Sure. I mean, I think that one of the things that what I love about audiobook narration is actually bringing to it not just my acting background, but my writer impulses of really trying to help figure out what the writer is trying to accomplish and how I can best translate it. And then suddenly when all the pressure is on me and I suddenly have to really try to think about how I'm going to record this book that I wrote. As you would think I thought about it ahead of time, but I could have probably done that a little bit more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. There's so many familiar faces here and so many bookstores that I've loved visiting, and I can't wait to be here. And I just thank you all so much.
Maggie, you were right to be here. Julia, I just want to pop in and say, I for the first time ever had the experience of recording my own audiobook, and I'm here in Palm Springs, California, where, you know, it can easily top 100 degrees during the day. And as you know, one of the first things they have to do when you record is turn off the air conditioning. So I'm just giving you that if you need an idea for a sequel and you want to turn up the heat on your characters, just you could literally like turn up the heat.
That is, I think that'll be the name of it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Summer, thank you so much. Julia, congratulations again. Up next, we have the Octavia E. Butler Award for Science Fiction and Fantasy. It's wild to think that we ever shared an era with an artist with as keen a vision of the future and of magic as Octavia E. Butler, let alone a state. Today's nominees can now count themselves among the few honored in her name. They've brought us tales of rats, aliens, kung fu, gunslingers, and curses, each as specific in their world building as they are distinct, while managing to tell the truth of our world while exploring the ones that they created. The nominees for the Octavia E. Butler Award for Science Fiction and Fantasy are Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed, Bluebird by C.L. Pierlo, The Art of Prophecy by Wesley Chu, Singer Distance by Ethan Chatanier, and Wrath by Shuran Mualim and Daniel Kraus. And the Octavia E. Butler Award for Science Fiction and Fantasy goes to... It's a tie between Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed and Singer Distance by Ethan Chatanier. They will both be appearing in conversation with Elayna Trucker from the Napa Bookmine. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maggie, and congratulations to Ava Reed and Ethan Chatanier. It's so exciting to have two winners for this award that are so completely different from each other. I think it's so exciting to show the amazing breadth of what people want to read and of what quote unquote genre fiction can bring you, such emotion and heart that these two books have. Briefly, I'll introduce you to Ava. Currently lives in Palo Alto and is the best-selling author of The Wolf and the Woodsman. And her newest book, A Study in Drowning, is coming out in September. I'm sure everybody's super excited about that. And Ethan Chatanier's stories have appeared in the Kenyan Review, Georgia Review, and New England Review, and been listed as notable in the Best American Short Stories. He's a Pushcart Prize winner, is the author of the story collections Warnings from the Future, and lives in Fresno. So love to have these two California authors here. Thank you so much for joining us. I have just a couple questions for both of you. I get a little extra time because there's two of you, hooray. So Ava, why don't we start with you? I would love to talk about fairy tales. Juniper and Thorn is a story wrapped up in a bunch of other stories that then reference each other. How are fairy tales important to the fantasy genre and to your writing of Juniper and Thorn in particular?
Yeah, I definitely wanted it to feel kind of like this crazy mashup of like different fairy tale themes, motifs, symbols, because I think like shoving them all together kind of shines a light on how like bizarre they are. And like Marlinchian's magical thinking feels so like pathological and obsessive compulsive, and it is, but it's also like just taking the underlying logic of fairy tales, which is incredibly bizarre. Obviously fairy tales are like an incredibly important bedrock of fantasy, and like right now specifically these like feminist fairy tale retellings are like absolutely everywhere. So this book was written kind of in response to that, and this like kind of insistence that I kept seeing that like, oh, the character has to refuse to be a victim to be like a feminist. Yeah, I thought it was kind of reductionist and frustrating because I think that victimhood is a complex and dynamic state of being on its own. It doesn't rob you of personhood, it just transfigures your sense of self. So yeah, I guess I just kind of wrote Juniper as a response to that kind of idea that I was seeing. And I think that like those escapist kind of books are like great and they definitely have their place, but when they're the only thing in the genre, it's just like kind of makes for really boring fiction. Yeah, sorry, I'm very nervous. I never thought this book would like win anything or like find any audience outside of like weird cannibalism enjoyers like me.
Well, we all enjoyed it on the committee for sure. And obviously California booksellers are super stoked on it. So congratulations, well done. And then Ethan, your story is about this crazy smart math genius. So I want to know which came first for you in the writing of this book, the math or the storyline? And how then did you weave them together?
What came first was the idea of a civilization on Mars that's not interested in us. And that kind of, for me, resonated with the idea of, a so close but so far away type of story. And I wanted to parallel that with these two, characters in love on Earth, but who are not necessarily in love with each other in the same way. And from there, I came with the idea of them trying to measure up to the Martians to get their attention. And it was from there that I leapt to the math. And that was fun because I got to kind of design the weird Martian math in such a way that it was also working with those themes of the story and kind of about physical distances while the book is exploring emotional distance.
So I have to ask, do you have a picture in your head of what these invisible Martians look like? And if you do, are you allowed to tell us?
I don't. And yeah, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that the Martians don't show up in the book. They stay pretty aloof. And no, I mean, I've got an image of like what the tops of their buildings would look like through a telescope. And that's about as close as the characters get.
Okay, I'll take that for now. And then I have one more quick question for Ava. The character of Minh, Papa, the father, do you consider him the villain or is he a tragic figure as well?
So he basically belongs to a class of people that have a real historical analog, which are the kind of petty feudal lords in 19th century Russia who were suddenly robbed of their titles and lands when the Tsar abolished feudalism, which didn't happen in the Russian Empire until, like I said, the mid 19th century. So obviously this isn't actually a very sympathetic backstory, but it does explain the righteous anger that he feels and the fear that his power is being eroded and his lifestyle is being disrupted, and that is really true. And obviously it's not actually a bad thing to end feudalism, but it is very much a threat to him. And unfortunately the same kind of rhetoric from ethnic nationalism in Eastern Europe today kind of follows through, only without the ornamentation of magic. And could someone else in his situation accept this change graciously? Definitely yes. But ultimately he's kind of the stand-in for the many people who did not and do not. And I think that those reactionaries are some of the most miserable people in the world. So yeah, it's definitely possible to view him as a tragic figure, because people today think it's a tragedy when billionaires have to pay taxes. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much, Ava and Ethan. Your two books are, again, so different, but so smart. And I just encourage everybody to read them both if they haven't, even back to back like I did, so you can really appreciate them. Thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elayna, and thank you to all the booksellers and everyone out there.
Congratulations to you both. We're getting down there to our final awards of the evening. Glenn Goldman has two awards, the Glenn Goldman California Lifestyle Award and the Glenn Goldman Award for California Cooking. These awards are given as a tribute to the former bookstore owner and friend of so many, Glenn Goldman. Goldman was the owner of the iconic bookstore Book Soup, which he founded in 1975 on the famed Sunset Strip of Sunset Boulevard. When I first moved to Los Angeles, the day after the Northridge earthquake, now 29 years ago, one of the first places I wanted to go to was Book Soup, both to make sure it was still there, but because it was a store I'd been dreaming of. Sometimes bookstores rise to the level of being an institution, and certainly Book Soup is one of those. The finalists for the Glenn Goldman Award for California Lifestyle are The Stall House, Case Study House Number 22 by Bruce Stahl. The Coasts of California by Obi Kaufman. The High Sierra by Kim Stanley Robinson. Point Break, Raymond Pettibon by Jamie Brisick. You Know Exactly, the third collection of All Over Coffee by Paul Madonna. And the Glenn Goldman Award for California Lifestyle goes to The High Sierra by Kim Stanley Robinson. Kim will be in conversation with Maryelizabeth Iturralde is back.
Hello again, and I just want to briefly apologize to Kirstin Chen for omitting her bio when I introduced her because I was so excited to get to my second paragraph in my question. So briefly, for those of you who may not know him, Stan is a New York Times bestseller and winner of the Hugo, Nebula, and Locus Awards. He's the author of more than 20 books, including the best-selling Mars trilogy and the critically acclaimed 2312. Shaman, New York 2140, and the Ministry for the Future. In 2008, he was named a Hero of the Environment by Time magazine, and he works with the Sierra Nevada Research Institute. He lives in Davis, California, near the Sierra Nevadas. So, Stan, the subtitle of High Sierra is A Love Story. And I feel like it's a continuing theme in your body of work, trying to get readers invested in the environment and taking action in our present in order to secure a future. Do you think your writing approach for High Sierra was similar to what you use for your science fiction and fantasy writing, or different?
Well, it's a good question, and thank you, Maryelizabeth. It's thanks also for your support for our genre through the many years. It's good to see you again. And thanks to Kaliba, it is really a pleasure to get a Golden Poppy Award. I am a Californian. I spent a year soon after my birth in Pasadena, 3 years in Inglewood, 11 years in Orange County, 11 years in San Diego, and now countless years in Davis. And so I feel like both a Northern and Southern Californian, and the Sierra Nevada has always been there for me for these last 50 years. This is my first nonfiction book, so it felt completely different. It has a strand of memoir, it has history, other Californians who've fallen in love with the High Sierra and then changed their lives to try to get back up there as much as they can. And some geology as well, botany, things I don't know as much about. It was fun to try. It was awkward. I am a novelist. I'd rather stay behind the curtain and let my characters do the talking, but this book was so different that I can't even, it just didn't feel the same as doing fiction, even though in my fiction, I have made excuses to send my characters up to the Sierra from time to time. Pretty lame excuses, I might add. Getting to just write about it directly was a joy and new, but also memoir is weird and uncomfortable. I don't trust it. I don't like it. So I'm going to try it again.
Well, and the structure, you interspersed all sorts of different approaches. When you started, did you have sort of those layers, or did you develop it by trying to write about your love of the High Sierras in different ways? You know, you talk about the roots, like you said, you talk about the geology, you talk about the peoples, and you share personal trips.
Yeah, I quickly realized that there are some writers, nonfiction writers, who can skillfully morph from one topic to the next, paragraph to paragraph, like John McPhee, for instance. I couldn't do that without creating a lot of wasted words, making transitions. And through the decades, I'd been pondering these various aspects of the Sierra. Why do people fall in love with it? Well, this is a hard question. I can say this is a book in the romance category because it's a love story. And a lot of people feel the same as me, but nobody can express it very well. So I quickly broke it into chapters. I had done the same thing in my most recent novel, Ministry for the Future. So to a certain extent, it was using a format I had already discovered worked pretty well to get a lot of different kinds of materials in without working too hard on transitions.
Well, congratulations. And whether your next work is nonfiction or more speculative fiction, we are always happy to hear from you, a Californian through and through.
Well, thank you. And can I also say I worked at Orpheus Books for 5 years. I want to thank Bob and Jim at Orpheus Books, Davis, California, avid reader, Davis, California, independent bookstore that I love dearly. And also my editor, Michael Peash, and everybody else at Little Brown. So thank you. Yes, wonderful pleasure.
So many writers have backgrounds as booksellers, and you know what? Maybe I should take a part-time job since I have a new bookstore in town. Finally, our final award for the night, the Glenn Goldman Award for California Cooking. The nominees are Horn Barbecue by Matt Horn, Buen Provecho by Erica Sanchez, 6 California Kitchens by Sally Schmidt, Masa, Jorge Gavira, Mooncakes and Milk Bread, Christina Cho. And the Glenn Goldman Award for California Cooking goes to, I'm gonna miss that drum roll, 6 California Kitchens by Sally Schmidt. Accepting on behalf of Sally Schmidt is her grandson, Byron Hoffman, who will be in conversation with Kristin.
Hi again. Thank you so much, Stephen. Hi, Byron. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight. I know I could talk to you for hours about your grandmother and what she accomplished in her life, but I'm going to just read a little bit of a bio on Sally, and then I want to ask you a few questions. First of all, Sally unfortunately had passed away in March of this past year at the age of 90, just a month before her cookbook was released by our friends at Chronicle. Sally Schmidt was a pioneer in the farm-to-table movement and the largely unsung hero of California cuisine. She, along with her husband, Don, founded the French Laundry and raised 5 children in the still very sleepy Napa Valley of the 60s and 70s. She has been praised by her fellow chefs, looking at you, Thomas Keller, and journalists, her beloved customers, and her passion for seasonal local ingredients have shaped how we all eat today. Her book, 6 California Kitchens, which I'm a proud owner of, is part memoir, part cookbook, and part delicious California history lesson. The Glenn Goldman Award is given to honor a particular California sensibility, and Sally's book really stood out for its California-ness. I don't think that's a word, but maybe it could be now. Byron, thank you so much for joining us. We're so honored to have you here with us. One of the things that all of us on the Glenn Goldman Committee loved so much about this cookbook was the way that it was laid out. It is literally a cookbook in 6 kitchens. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, thank you so much. As you said, like Sally was born in California. She spent her entire life in California. All of her kitchens were in California. She would be incredibly honored to receive this award. It would mean a lot to her, and it means a lot to our family. It means a lot to me. So thank you. In terms of how the book kind of was laid out, and this combination of kind of memoir and cookbook, it was a very natural, organic process. This book was a 10-year labor of love, and it started off as us in conversation with Sally. We actually kind of presented the idea of a book to her on her 80th birthday party, and said you have all these recipes that the grandchildren, like our children should know about, like these recipes should live on. And we kind of presented to her, like, we want to help you put together a book, and she reluctantly agreed to the idea, and it was a progression. So when she started writing, she pictured just writing for her future family members that she would never be able to meet. And I worked with her really closely along the way, and it just quickly became apparent that her stories needed a wider audience. So where it started off as her just getting her recipes down, then it turned into, well, each one of these recipes has a little story attached. Let's dive into that. And then it turned into, well, there's these kitchens that each recipe kind of, you know, originated in. Like, let's talk a bit about those kitchens. And because Sally, you know, really never separated her kind of family life and her cooking life, then that naturally just bled into kind of a story of family as well. So it was a very organic process that led us to what I think in the end is a fairly kind of unconventional combination of memoir and cookbook.
It is. It's just the most beautiful layout. The recipes are, of course, fantastic, and the way that the way that you have the pictures and the historical detail and everything about it is just an absolute treat. And there's also we've dropped a link. Byron and his family have a website, 6californiakitchens.com, and there's lots of great material there to take a look at. I think it would certainly help booksellers to understand a little bit more about Sally, and in order to sell this book. It's just wonderful. If we could, thank you so much for being with us. If we could bring our hosts back, Maggie and Stephen, Maryelizabeth, the Kaliba crew, if you're not too shy and you want to come on. I just want to wrap up very quickly with a few announcements. All of our authors, if you wouldn't mind coming back on screen so that your fans can see you. If you're still here with us, come say hi, booksellers. Say hello. It's so great to see your faces. Just a few quick announcements. I have a very exciting announcement. We had a display contest associated with the Golden Poppies this year, and I want to give a shout out to the winners. Children's Book World in Los Angeles, yay! And Books Inc. in San Francisco's Laurel Village. Sorry. Yay. I think Summer was probably very much responsible for that. So congrats to the wonderful stores, and thank you for supporting the Golden Poppies in that way. And your check is in the mail. Okay. Don't forget, if you haven't already, we have Golden Poppy winner stickers and new this year bookmarks with the winners all on the bookmarks. And Emma is dropping a link in the chat where you can get the stickers and the bookmarks. Just fill out a quick form. They are free to you, and I will send them to you as soon as possible. So please be sure and get those. Let's see, publishers, if you're here with us, and I know there are a few, don't forget that the nominations for Golden Poppy 23 are now open. So send us your amazing California talent. We're very excited to start reading. Lastly, I want to thank our incredible hosts, Maggie Takuda Hall and Stephen Rowley. They were fantastic. Everything we hoped they would be and more. We appreciate you both so much. Don't forget, Stephen's book, The Celebrants, is coming out in May, and Maggie's book, the sequel to The Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea, is coming out from Candlewick in September. Stephen's is from Putnam. Sally would kill me if I didn't say that, so I'm going to be sure and get that in there. An extra big thanks to all of our wonderful California authors and creators for joining us tonight, and also to Paul Tran and Dan Santat, who could not join us. We are sending them a very big virtual hug. I want to thank my friend Maryelizabeth for, oh my gosh, so carefully steering this Golden Poppy ship for the last 2 years. We are incredibly grateful for your leadership. Thanks also to the Kaliba team and my partner in crime, Emma, and the genius behind the scenes of this virtual show, our wonderful Valentina. Thank you all so much, and good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.